Good morning, good morning. How's everybody feeling? Excellent. Welcome to the final day of NeoCon, maybe the final presentation of NeoCon. So thrilled that you're all here. My name's Tanner Woodford. I'm the founder and executive director of the Design Museum of Chicago. If you don't know us, we're located at 72 East Randolph, right across the street from the Chicago Cultural Center. Alongside NeoCon, we're proud to be one of Chicago's key cultural representatives of design. Next, we're opening an exhibition called At the Precipice, which I am thrilled about. It features responses to the climate crisis. It was curated by Colossal, and it opens in our gallery on July 17th. So mark your calendars, come see it. It's gonna be a great show. At the Design Museum, we produce countless exhibitions and events within the four walls of our gallery, but also throughout the many beautiful Chicago neighborhoods. Designing a Better Chicago, it's one of my favorite programs, and it's one of the many programs that brings us outside of the museum's walls and into the community. As a museum, we celebrate art and design, but we also understand the necessity for us to be community leaders and create programs like this to reach those that are making Chicago a better place through design. Today, we're so proud to partner with loop-based organizations to create a supporting foundation for community organizations all across Chicago. This work pushes our mission further into being community-led and design-followed, which is a phrase I've picked up from our absolutely brilliant auxiliary board. So with all that said, I got a few folks to thank, and then I'll introduce you to the 2023 grantees and our panel so we can get started. So first off, thank you to NeoCon and the MART, the City of Chicago's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, and our advisory committee, which is comprised of designers, community members, and former grantees, some of which are in the audience today. So give a round of applause to all those folks. And now I'm so thrilled and pleased to introduce our 2023 grant recipients behind me, Center for Native Futures and the Chicago Tool Library, and I'll introduce who these folks are as well in a second. I also wanted to shout out our honorable mentions, our special recognition, Arts of Life, the North Lawndale Community Coordinating Council, and Aram Han Cifuentes. We're so pleased. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause as well. So without further ado, I'll stop standing in front of my friends here and introduce you to Quilen Blackwell, who's the president of Chicago Eco House and also the moderator of today's conversation and the 2022 Design Impact Grantee. And I'd also like to introduce you to Monica on the left here, Monica Rickert-Bolter, who's the Director of Operations for the Center for Native Futures, a new organization that I'm so excited about. Absolutely. And then in the middle, Tessa Vierk, Executive Director and co-founder of the Chicago Tool Library, another really amazing organization that I'm so pleased to partner with this year. After this, please join us to meet the grantees. We've got a couple of donuts, there's coffee outside, so we got the room for a little bit if we want to hang out and ask questions of the grantees. So with that, I'll get off the stage and let you all take it away.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Tanner. Appreciate that introduction. Happy to be here. Thank you guys for coming and joining us for these esteemed panelists. So let's get right into it. All right, so let's just start with you guys just talking a little bit about what your work is and who you are. Want to start with kick off, Monica?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Bonjour, Ani, Monica Rickert-Bolter. I am Black and Prairie Band Potawatomi. I'm a visual artist, and just so everybody knows, this is full circle for me because my school, which is no longer there, across the way from Merchandise Mart, when I first moved to Chicago in 2004, I studied animation, and just being here now is like, whoa, that was a lifetime ago. Center for Native Futures has been a dream of my fellow co-founders, Deborah Yeppa-Papan and Chris Papan, for many, many years. And we are just thrilled that it's all actually coming together, and we actually have a physical space, and we will be located in the Marquette building, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. And our main thing is that we are focusing on contemporary Native fine arts, which they do not seem to necessarily have a huge presence here in the Midwest. And we really want to help feature Midwest artists, keep people here in the city, and showcase that you can see some really innovative, lovely, incredible work by Native people, and it's not just a stereotypical look. Like, it's going to be very different. So we're so thrilled that we actually have space and to see how that expands in the future.
All right, thank you so much, Monica. How about you, Tessa?
Hi, my name is Tessa Vierk. I am the co-founder and executive director of the Chicago Tool Library. We are a small nonprofit here in Chicago. We started about 4 years ago. We were on the south side for 3 years, and we just moved into a really big new space on the west side of Chicago in West Garfield Park. And if you're not familiar with the tool library concept, there's actually hundreds of them around the world, but we've sort of created one for Chicago, and it is a lot like a book library, but instead of books, of course, we have things that people can borrow. And that is tools for home repair, DIY, gardening, but we also have lots of other quality of life items that people can come borrow, like folding tables and chairs, or KitchenAid mixers, or camping equipment, lots of stuff that people in Chicago really value having access to, but don't want to own themselves because it's expensive, bulky to store, or you just don't need it that often. And so we really work to build and kind of foster collective wealth in our city. And we're really excited to be in our new space because it's also allowed us to start a new membership program where we actually are able to lend tools to community groups as well. Instead of just individual Chicagoans, we're now supporting all sorts of projects for nonprofits and block clubs and community gardens, small businesses across Chicago too. We started about a month ago, so I love what we do.
So when you say you support community groups, you mean like if someone has like a big community cleanup, they can go to the Chicago Tool Library and be able to rent some tools?
Yeah, exactly. So the similar program to what we've been doing for individuals, where people can come borrow things, use them for their projects, and then bring them back for somebody else to use. We acquired 5,000 new tools in the process of our move that allowed us to also start lending tools to organizations because we've just been able to bump up our volume. But now we're excited to kind of learn more about those groups and figure out their needs.
Excellent. Okay, so could you guys talk a little bit about the specific project that you got funding for through the Chicago Design Museum?
Sure. So our proposal involved Native curators. So it's the curatorial advancement of Native arts. And we just are basically trying to create this mentorship program that will really focus and highlight Native values and how these things have evolved and through the arts. One of the huge things about Center for Native Futures is our focus on Indigenous futurism, which focuses on past, present, and future, and just how art can grow and expand and really be a livelihood for artists here. And so people don't always have to feel like they have to go to the Southwest to see Native art, or they have to go to the Northwest Coast. Like, you can do that here in the Midwest and see the wonderful Great Lakes artists. And, we're also thinking of working outside of political borders where, this may actually end up being open a little bit more to our Canadian relatives and First Nations folks, and how we can partner and expand and showcase. Like, we have these similar stories and these narratives that have been, overshadowed or convoluted over the years. So, we're at a wonderful place where Native people can actually speak for themselves, showcase their voice, and, what we're trying to do with the arts.
Okay, so when you say Indigenous futurism, that's a brand new term to me. I don't know if you guys heard of that term. Could you unpack that a little bit? Like, what does that actually mean to you, to the organization, and to the Native peoples?
Yeah, so like I said, it's very similar to working with the past, present, and future, and how that all intermingles and ties in together, particularly through the advancement of art. How are people utilizing traditional practices and then showcasing art in a new way, or telling these stories that maybe have been forgotten or just not enough people knew about, and how do you make it accessible for broader audiences, and how can you showcase, like, oh, well, we're keeping this tradition alive by doing this, but also expanding on the whole realm. So it's making sure we do have a future, because a lot of times Native people are just put in just in the past, 1800s, boom, done, dead. It's not us. We're still very much alive and present, and doing things to help our communities. Like, we really want to support one another and build something here, and not make sure people just don't either get too burnt out and end up leaving the city. So that's one of the main focuses.
Okay, all right, excellent. And Tessa, what's a project that you're getting ready to roll out?
Yeah, so kind of back to what I mentioned in the last prompt is we have this new program where, for 4 years we've sort of figured out how to get tools to the average Chicagoan. We feel really strong about our ability to do that. We feel like we really understand the needs of our community, but now we have We're trying to serve community groups and really blow up our impact in neighborhoods. When we're able to partner with groups, like some of our early adopters to this program are like Austin Green Team. They do a whole bunch of gardening projects on the west side of Chicago near our new space. And they've been using our service almost every other week to host events. They've done cleanups. They've been activating gardens across Austin. And so this grant is going to allow us to be better partners with all these community groups across Chicago, figure out how to help them accomplish their big design projects. What does that look like in their neighborhood? How can we better serve and elevate the work that they're trying to do, design-related, community building. And so this is going to go such a long way to helping us make that service stronger, because it's new to us and we have a lot to learn.
All right, excellent. Well, shifting gears a little bit. So both you guys are community-based projects. You guys have a litany of community partners that you work with. So could you talk a little bit about the importance of enlisting and engaging community partners in your design process and why you think that's important?
Absolutely. Well, for starters, we didn't have a space for a little bit, so everything was virtual, and we did rely a lot on our community partners and partnerships with different institutions like the Northwestern Center for Native American and Indigenous Research, CNARE, and we created an artist in residence program, and that was a pilot program for us to actually see, like, okay, how can we best serve our Native artists and like really help them out. And Northwestern was able to provide a space for that. So now we have our space at the Marquette building, and we actually have a studio space ready and available, which we will then utilize in the program also to have an artist residence, but also a curatorial program where we focus on, like, okay, what are things that Native curators really want to see, or how they can expand on, you know, just if they're not completely reliant on their institution that they were in, and just had an open, free space to be like, just go nuts. So we're kind of trying to provide spaces like that. But the partnerships have just been really incredible. Like the Terra Foundation has just been one of our major supporters, and the MacArthur Foundation, who was like, here's the space. They own the Marquette building, and if most of you know or been in there, in the atrium, there is a very problematic depiction of Marquette and his storyline, and how basically taming the savage natives in it. And it's still something that resonates, and it doesn't reflect who the people were in the city and what they actually look like. They're actually depicting Plains natives, and that's just not what we look like. So there is going to be a intervention that happens, and that's with our other co-founder, Andrea Carlson and John Lau, who are curating a space like that is just on the outdoors of our gallery, and that'll just kind of be like addressing the problematic issues with that mural. But also right across is Center for Native Futures, and then you can be like, oh, this is actually what Native people are doing, and this is how they look, and this is, the art and the narratives and things that we want to focus on. So that in itself is kind of like, that is past, present, future, and how we think about actually intertwining everything. So I love that.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. How about you, Tess? How do you guys engage community partners?
Yeah, I mean, engaging community partners is kind of the crux of this entire project for us. We are a COVID organization. We opened 6 months before, COVID-19 lockdowns. And so while we are a physical space that people come to, we are also just we're not exactly a direct service organization. We're not going home with people to complete their projects. We are catalyzing projects, but we don't really see a lot of what is produced due to our work out in the world. So for us, this new project of working with community groups is going to be really exciting and really important, because we're going to have to actually build these stronger partnerships with community groups to understand specifically what they need and specifically what their vision is for their projects and their neighborhoods, so that we can directly support them and directly partner with them in a way that we've never really done before, especially on the west side, which is new to us. And so we've gotten such a warm welcome from West Garfield Park organizations and community groups already, and in Austin, North Lawndale, all sorts of amazing West Side groups. But With the help of this grant, we are going to be able to really, really dig into those partnerships, better serve those neighborhoods and those community groups who are already doing amazing work. They have the communities, they understand their needs, and then we're just going to be able to support them. So for us, it's literally the whole goal with this project is to make those partnerships. So we're really looking forward to it.
Okay, so a quick follow-up. So, community can be, very vast and broad and robust, and, not everyone always is going to be, a fan of your work. So could you guys talk a little bit about how you sort of navigate maybe some of the more challenging dynamics of, engaging community in your design process through your work, and maybe how it's, caused you to pivot or adjust, so that, you can still be effective, get your mission, accomplish your mission, while also sort of, not, bumping up against too many sharp shoulders.
It's a challenge, definitely, dealing with the community and everything, and how we want to feel accepted and supported, and not always feeling like that in certain spaces. I feel like our group is kind of the misfits, where we had to create a space that we were like, okay, we can actually be comfortable here because we want to support LGBTQ poets and writers. We want to support mixed identity natives who their perspectives is just as valuable as any full-blooded or folks that are from the res. Or the reservation, where we also have natives that grew up in the city, and that's a whole other perspective and story, and how those folks keep their traditions alive. And it's just not one size fits all, which I think that's something that I think we all can kind of be like, yeah, it doesn't always fit all. So sometimes you have to have that room to expand and grow and really just try to tackle those issues, and find your good supporters, find the folks that you love working with and who will challenge you, but also you're like, but I like you enough where I'm going to keep going, or get you in the right direction. And you just see like what can actually bloom and blossom from it. So it's been really great seeing the support and just people actually having faith that you can get it done. We love it.
I would say one of our biggest struggles with engaging with the community for our progress is just managing expectations and staying true to our own capacity. We're a new nonprofit, and people get really excited about the possibilities of spaces like ours because it sort of is a little bit of a special, radical type space. I mean, I get really excited about our space because libraries are really exciting. They're really special. They're very unique. There aren't very many places you can go in a city or a town that you can go just be and not spend a bunch of money, and people are there sincerely to help you try and accomplish a goal. And we're not part of a big institution. We're a very low barrier, welcoming space. So when people feel those feelings that our space creates, their imagination just sort of explodes, and people want us to be all things. And we want to hear the demand, but we also want to know what we can accomplish and not like flame out as a small nonprofit. So that's something we struggle with a lot, is they get really excited and they want, wow, we could have classes and you guys could do this and this and this. And it's like, yeah, we could maybe someday with a lot more support and sleep and funding. So being true to ourselves and trusting ourselves to understand our capacity while maintaining kind of that interest and curiosity about the public's needs, but then managing that with your own needs that's definitely a kind of back and forth we have a lot as a new nonprofit.
Yep, having to learn how to say no is very key.
Yeah.
It's a superpower.
Okay, so Monica, kind of talking, a little bit more about your guys' individual stories. So you're an artist, who use traditional mediums such as charcoals, pastels, graphic design, and digital coloring to tell stories. Can you share a little bit about how your personal background has informed your view on design, as well as how you bring your skills to bear to Cana, and the Center for Native Futures, and how you really believe that your personal story is going to be carried out and sort of be continued through your work.
Yeah. So being a mixed person, it's very natural to mix things and mix traditions and digital practices. So I went to school for animation and really hated it. But everything that went into it and telling those stories and utilizing art and thinking about that always stuck with me. So I didn't have the best experience at school. It's also, I didn't necessarily feel accepted or that I should put my own personal values or perspective into the artwork, because they were taught, like, don't put yourself, it's all about the client. So that was very challenging for me. And as I kind of stepped back into doing more art, then it was like more graphic design. And I'm like, I wasn't taught that. I was like, I don't know what to do here. But my brother, he studied graphic design, so I'd be like, hey, how do they approach it like this? I'm like, oh, okay, got to think about it like that. And it's all about like reframing and really changing up that perspective and how you can utilize those certain tools and skills in a new way. So since then, like my love for comics and video games and illustrations and all that, like that never went away. So I try to utilize that in the children's books. So Journey of the Freckled Indian by Alyssa London, former Miss Alaska, Tlingit Woman, and Preston Singletary. We utilized like traditional form line graphics to tell the story of a mixed Native child and how she can kind of navigate and just feel a little bit more confident in herself and still be her. Like all those things, it's just attributes that make up who she is. So if you ever check it out, it's a wonderful story, and it's a good introduction to blood quantum and the challenges that Native people face with that, because we're the only race that needs to actually prove that we're Native. So that's fun.
So quick follow-up. So you talked about how you've done a lot of work with children's illustration. Can you talk a little bit about the next generation and how you think your work will inspire the next generation, and why you even have a passion for like doing children's books and children's illustrations? I mean, that's a pretty unique niche. So just kind of unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah. So again, it like all just goes back to storytelling. I really never thought that I was a good storyteller. So I was just trying to find there's got to be another way that I can tell a story, not using my words necessarily, or just like speaking to a big group, but visually, and trying to incorporate that. And just I'm not like great at abstract. So even though there's certain concepts where it's like, how do I convey this feeling, or in a way that people can actually get? And my work at the Field Museum, so I have 3 installations there, and one was a giant mural about the Great Lakes, and that process actually ended up making me develop a whole new skill, a new our process of creating art, which included drawing with pastels and then digitally enhancing and like bringing a storyline together that could tell. It wasn't necessarily intended to be an environmental story, but it's how we need to actually take care of our space and how we relate. So my thinking is that you have to think about it holistically, even through art. Like, how can you relate to other folks and get them to actually be on board and be like, oh, if we change up the perspective and look at it in a different way. So we're hoping that'll continue to expand in Center for Native Futures. We're really excited to see, what new artists are going to be, coming to the city. People are already coming out. They're like, oh, we didn't know you existed. We're like, yes, come visit us, please, please. So we're very excited for, the first exhibition will feature our expo artists from the last 2 years at the Navy Pier Showcase. So we have some really phenomenal folks that are just doing incredible things, and I just can't wait. I really can't.
All right, so Tessa, it looks like you moonlight a little bit as a consultant, and you have helped other libraries, including the Evanston Public Library, sort of get, a tool library in place. So can you share a little bit about why it's important for you to use your skills to help provide a roadmap for other people to have a library of things?
Yeah. I mostly incredibly informally have consulted on dozens and dozens of tool libraries around the world. Partly, at the beginning, and very truly, it is because the tool library community as a whole is so collaborative. by nature, the whole point of tool libraries is sharing. So people are very free with information. It's part of why I felt so supported and felt brave enough to start a space like a tool library, because there was so much historical information and documentation and so much willingness from other folks at tool libraries around the world to support me. And so I've never doubted for a second, I've never said no to a person who wants to talk about starting their own tool library, partly again because of that sort of that interaction and that love and care and help that I felt, but also just because I think every community deserves a space like a tool library. And I think that a lot of us in the community have put in a lot of work to figure out the building blocks of one, but then, we're in like a new wave of them. We kind of talk in the tool library community about like different waves of tool libraries. Some of the first ones were sort of in the 1800s with like public librarians starting to lend like toys and educational materials alongside books, and just public librarians being amazing innovators who, aren't getting the credit for it. But then there's sort of like the Berkeley, California tool libraries in the 60s and 70s when people were kind of in this sort of environmental moment. And now I think that we're at a really crucial time where climate change is coming into play, where our spaces, we're really having this conversation about what do community centers and spaces like this in urban environments, but also rural environments, how can they function? How can they be resilient, responsive to new needs, to changing needs of communities, their income changing, climate needs changing, but also be anti-racist spaces. So how do we be a new kind of public space? So for me, part of the point of my work is to make more tool libraries and to make that easier for people to create, because one is never going to be enough, because it really isn't just a space. It's like an ethos about it's an ethos about sharing and collective wealth that we should all be benefiting from.
So could you talk, I think for a lot of people, maybe the library of things, tool library concept's kind of new. So if someone wanted to say, rent a snowblower, would they, you kind of walk us through what that process would be, and also what would, prevent someone from just keeping that snowblower at home? It's one thing when you go to the library and you're renting out your favorite DVD or your favorite book and you don't return that, but a $500, $600 piece of equipment, I think it would be a little more incentive to keep that. So kind of talk through, what that process looks like.
Yeah, I mean, we really want, again, our library spaces to feel like a library. We don't want them to be punitive spaces. These are not capitalist spaces. We are not trying to extract the most we can out of people, because we're a charity and we're here to help. We literally have the resources here for the people. We're not trying to block people and create new barriers to them getting them, especially when over 90% of the tools that we have in our space have been donated by people in the community. So we're really just recirculating things that we've all invested in already. They were basically sitting in people's garages. If one gets lost, or it's kind of okay, it's all right. It's getting more use and more opportunity to be useful than it was before. So kind of that calculation of loss and theft isn't really the most exciting part of it for me. It's really about how do we get more things in here, and how do we lower the barriers to get more people in here. So that bit aside, again, we want it to feel really familiar, so it's a lot like a public library. You get your library card, you can sign up online, you can see all the things we have online, which again are not just like drills. We have sewing machines, thousands of things, you have no idea. Even though I'm telling you now, you're gonna go look later and be like, whoa, really? There's we've got looms and karaoke machines, and it blows, it's mind blowing. So you sign up online and you can create your little library account. You can reserve things online, make an appointment to pick it up. We really want it to feel easy for people to, get their projects done. So that's us. We really want it to be easy and feel very generous, because we were created out of generosity. Again, all of this stuff came to us through people wanting to invest in their neighbors, to share what they have with other people, knowing that they weren't using it. So we are constantly rebuilding and investing in that spirit of generosity, because it's just what it is.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
We'll be in touch.
And so on the website, you do have a catalog where everything. So you can go to Chicago
all there.
to a library and get your sewing needs met, your karaoke needs met. Awesome. That's I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yep.
Okay, so both you guys are also founders. So let's say there's some people in the room who are have a great idea in their head, and they're thinking, man, I got this thing I want to really birth in the world. Can you both talk a little bit about what inspired you to be a founder, some of the obstacles that you encountered being a founder, and what advice you would have to an emerging founder?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of work with nonprofits, particularly the last 10 years, but actually setting one up was a whole other challenge. So yeah, also utilizing your networks and being like, hey, you know how to do that? Oh, you know how to do that? Okay, let's see how we can collaborate or make that happen. So, our initial startup, it was one person who's no longer with our group, she helped actually get like all the paperwork together, and then after she left, it was kind of like, oh, now I have to learn all this, great. And being a visual artist, like I only had so much training, so thankfully my tribe actually did help support, and I was able to do some professional development and really focus on like nonprofit leadership and stuff, and ended up being on the board of directors at the American Indian Center and learning a lot from that, that whole experience, and making some new connections there. But it's definitely a challenge with the whole nonprofits, and just making sure like, okay, these deadlines, okay, this is how to properly like tell these stories to get these grants, and really focusing on the narrative. So I'm really happy that I'm able to write stories that way as opposed to like being up here, which I'm still like getting used to. So thank you for all bearing with me. What were we talking about?
Access for founders.
Yeah. So sharing your founder story, and then also like what advice you would have.
Just keep at it. Really, just don't lose sight of that vision. There's always going to be challenges, and you have to be able to forgive yourself, and that trial and error. Like just keep going. Like that's how any successful person, any good relationship, anything that is worthwhile is just keep at it. The work is. It's going to be worth it.
How about you, Tessa? What advice would you share, and what's your genesis story, if you will?
A lot of that resonated with me first.
Okay.
Definitely, it's an annoying piece of advice, sort of that persistence, but it's sort of, you don't see results sometimes for a long time. I don't know. I didn't have like a straightforward path to where I am. I didn't really ever, I always maybe felt like I was smart, or like I could maybe lead a project, but I never really knew many women in charge of things in my youth. And when I was in college, I met this woman who was like 26 or something, who had her own nonprofit, and I was like, what? You just started something? Like literally I didn't know anyone else who had done something like that, and that always kind of stuck in my mind. But again, it didn't really it didn't click immediately. It was just like, whoa, it just stuck out to me. And then moving to Chicago, back to the Midwest where I'm from, I just felt so excited about Chicago's capacity for growth and creativity. Like, this is such a cool city to be in, to start things. Everybody here is so excited to support you. People are really curious about new projects and exciting initiatives in the city. It's just a very flexible place compared to other places I had been living. So advice for people, wanting to found something or start a new idea, a lot of the things you said, lean on existing knowledge. Ask people who have done it. Really listen to them when they're critical. Don't just listen to the people who are like cheerleading you. I really wish I had taken seriously some of the, not necessarily warnings, but just some like hard learnings I had from other nonprofit founders. I was like, no, we won't deal with that. I'm like, oh wow, okay, yeah, they were totally right. So doing a lot of research because you're not alone. Someone else has done something similar, or someone else has done something that could help you learn something. So leaning on existing knowledge, persistence. Those are the big ones, and I don't think I could have done it without a co-founder. I don't know how you feel about having like a core team. I don't know if I would have been brave enough to start my own project without my amazing co-founder, Jim Benton, because just having that sounding board and those complementary skill sets when you're trying to start something new is just invaluable.
Exactly.
Okay, so you guys kind of like brought out a couple of interesting things there that I think we got a few minutes to unpack. So, first of all, you talked about Chicago kind of being this, sort of petri dish, if you will, for entrepreneurship, creativity. So can you guys talk a little bit about what specifically, in your opinion, makes Chicago such a great place to start up new ideas? And then also, you kind of touched on the idea of having a co-founder. I think, it may be, surprising to people. So like, why specifically do you think having a co-founder has been helpful?
So our group actually, so we had this vision, but then had to take a step back because none of us knew how to start the nonprofit. And so we had to go through the training and all that and, do our own thing. But then a pandemic hit and we just started checking in with each other regularly. It was just a small group of artists and we were just like, you surviving, are you handling all the pressure and just like actually having to stay in. And the more we had those conversations, the more things evolved and just ended up developing into, should we make this happen? Like now or never if the world's ending. So it's like, how do we come out of this and start this whole new era of, just like really going for, what you really want. And I think Chicago can be such a tough town. Like it can really make or break you. Like I know people say that about New York, but Chicago's pretty rough around the edges too. So, but there's so much space and so many amazing, wonderful people that are actually here that you can still engage with and see like, oh, they did it over there. How did they do that? Or you can just be able to talk to folks. And I'm from Michigan, so diversity wasn't that big. So I always felt a little uncomfortable. And part of the reason I even moved to Chicago was like, no, I want to see more Black and brown people. I want to see folks with these other perspectives and not just Dutch County. I mean, that's fine, but, I just wanted to see some of the values and things that the way I was brought up and raised, reflected. So Chicago, yeah, it's a tough town. There was definitely some moments when I almost left. But, my brothers ended up moving here after me because I came here for school first. And then they were like, oh, this is cool. So they followed me. But, they really supported and helped keep me here and just be like, no, you can do this. Like, no matter what you think is like really beating you down or I know you went through something really difficult. And, just also meeting, wonderful people like Deborah and Chris. And, they've really helped. So yeah, it's so important to have those good supporters, those co-founders, people you can bounce ideas off of, people who are at different levels in their careers. Because if you get just a group of 30-year-olds, okay, well, you all only have like a certain perspective. So it's really good to have those other generations, sounding boards.
Sorry, Tessa?
Yeah, I guess what kind of prompted me to say that Chicago was such a great place for something like what the Tool Library has been trying to do is, I came, before moving back to Chicago, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, which, no shade on San Francisco, but it's just a competitive place. It's very competitive, and Chicago is noticeably more collaborative. And I feel like people here really want to build up other people trying to make cool stuff happen because people are invested in this city, they live here, they want to keep living here, and it's just felt people are really excited to share in people's successes in Chicago, in my experience. And so, even though you still have to fight for resources because, the city of Chicago, the bureaucracy that exists, and the community are two different things. It's very hard to take up space in Chicago bureaucratically. It's very hard to find commercial real estate. It's very hard to be a nonprofit or a small business that needs physical space in Chicago. That is not easy and something that we really struggled with. But as far as community support and engagement and resources, and that has always been, it's always felt very natural for the work that we've been doing. And so we feel very lucky to be doing Tool Library work here in Chicago.
And then can you talk a little bit about the importance of a co-founder? And
Yeah. Like I mentioned, just, for me, if you're trying to start something new, you're going to doubt yourself constantly. And you shouldn't, because you do need to persist and you need to keep refining your work and you need to keep testing the limits and you need to keep building strength. And so having other folks at your side to do that with just makes it that much easier because it will require, starting something new just does require a lot of persistence. So I really can't imagine having done any of the work I've done without all of the folks on my team, much less having a co-founder in the very early days when you're feeling very vulnerable and unsure.
Okay, so, kind of shifting gears, before we open up for audience Q&A, could you guys both talk about the future of design in Chicago more broadly? Where do you see design going? What do you think are some of the key factors that are going to drive Chicago-based design in the near to long-term future?
Yeah, well, because this place is so collaborative and so diverse, like I think just actually opening up, we have the diversity, we have these folks that have these wonderful new ideas or ideas that, can relate back to like, oh, well, this is actually kind of culturally related, and how do we bring that, to the forefront, or, get people to think about it holistically or just like from these different angles, because honestly, that's why Center for Native Futures was even formulated, because we would try to get, other folks involved with established nonprofits and all these other spaces, but it just wasn't quite happening. So, the fact that we were able to get, this lovely, huge, like 3,800 square feet, space for gallery, workshops, artist residency, has just been phenomenal. So, we're still kind of like set in just that white box space, and we'll do our trial and error. We'll see what works, what doesn't, with certain artists that we end up bringing in, and how their vision for the space and really utilizing and optimizing it. But, ideally, we would love to have our own place, our own building, hopefully. Anybody's involved, anybody wants to invest, where, we could have a giant art center, like something similar to Hyde Park Art Center or the South Side Art Center, where, these are just artists who have this vision of this is what artists need. And how can we utilize these resources and make sure that people have space to like, okay, this is how it actually probably should look, or how it can, or do you re-envision like certain spaces like downtown that businesses can't stay afloat or can't keep being persistent? Do you look at it in another way, like, okay, well, how do you support the community with those spaces? Because businesses are just either not being able to stay there or not being able to be sustainable. But something that could support the community, how do you access that? How do you make it so everybody can really get involved with that? So I'm very excited, because I think everybody's kind of getting on that same page, where it's like, oh no, we really got to change up this perspective and how we utilize design and how we can really just restructure things. So I'm very excited to see what possibilities are and new collaborations. So yeah.
All right, Tessa.
Yeah, I guess the name of our project was democratizing design, power tools to the people. A little corny, but that's kind of what we're trying to do in our vision for what design, our piece of design and kind of our contribution and our perspective on design is about. Kind of democratizing design and access to design concepts and literal tools to build collective design capacity on like a neighborhood level. And so for me, kind of our work is always going to be in de-institutionalizing resources, getting them out of high barrier spaces that are expensive or exclusive, and creating that sort of low barrier capacity on a neighborhood level, clawing back resources from capitalist institutions or very high barrier institutions, and getting them into the hands of people who have their own ideas that are separate and unique and important too, and giving people the power to make those immediate neighborhood level changes. So for us, yeah, it's very much about moving resources related to design out and getting them into the hands of people as easily as possible is sort of our vision.